All right, so for this ZBrush tutorial, I'm going to show how to bring in reference images, which I find to be just tremendously helpful here with character modeling and things like that. If you're going to, if it kind of helps even if you're starting your model from scratch, or if you're pretty far along in the process and you want to just have the reference images available to you. It only takes a second, and you can turn the visibility of them off really easily by just the click of a button. And so this is something I highly recommend for character modeling in ZBrush. So without further ado here, this all stems from, I'll just, I'm going to start by creating a sphere 3D object. So just imagine that this is, either your model or going to be your starting point here. And the way that the orthographic images work is it's all has to do with this floor button right here, this right underneath perspective right here. And so you'll see here that the floor will show up when you press it. And then in here where my cursor is right here, there's a XYZ. And these are little mini buttons that are nestled within the button. And you can see I can turn on the X plane as well as the Z plane right there. And if I hold shift and rotate, it'll lock from one orthographic view to the next. And you can see perspective is turned on. And so with perspective on, you can see the perspective of those grids right there. And so take a note of this. So if you take the perspective off by clicking that button or pressing P, it turns into a true orthographic view here. The perspective disappears. So just kind of keep that in mind because that'll be relevant as we work here. So the idea here is we're going to import the reference images and project them onto these planes. And so the way to do that is if you go up, this all happens in this draw menu right here where my cursor is at the top. So the draw menu, and I'll just break this off and pull it to the side by pressing this power button so that this little hand shows up. And again, this is the draw tab. And so if I just click on the power button so that the tab shows up, it'll show up like that. And then I can just drag it off to the side menu and it'll show up there. So the reason I'm doing that is to show you how to kind of do that technique in case you're just kind of getting welcomed into ZBrush here. It's also useful because this menu is pretty deep and it'll just be a pain to just kind of keep coming up here and scrolling through here and trying to find what we want rather than just having it right off to the side right here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the front image that we want to import. And so underneath the draw menu, so the draw menu starts here and we have all the stuff. And I'll just drag right past it to basically towards the bottom, this little bottom panel in the draw menu. And all the stuff we need happens in this panel area right here. And so there's this front back tab. And so I'm going to import the front image first. So I'm going to click on that to expand it out. And you'll see map 1, map 2 are the options. So I'll click on map 1. And when I click on map 1, this will come up. And there's a lot of default textures here. We want to import our own reference image. So the import button can be found at the bottom right here. And I'll click import. And from here, I'm going to try to remember where I put my reference images. So I'll import the front, and that looks okay for now. I'll turn off perspective again. And so one important note here is if I activate symmetry by pressing X or pressing the transform activate symmetry button, you can see my middle point happens right here. And so I really highly recommend you don't move your model, don't move your model to match up. Rather, I'd suggest moving this drawing so that it's centered. And so the way to do that is again under the draw menu. See, this is where we imported the map here. You can do there's these sliders where you can do scale, horizontal offset, vertical offset. So I'll just slide the horizontal offset until centered up. He was already pretty close, but just kind of showing that. So the horizontal slider right there, and you can kind of make some adjustments here. As you'll see here, you can rotate, flip, do a lot of adjustments. So I'll zoom out, and now I want to get the side view, and so I'll close down that front back, and I'll go to the left right, the side view. Same thing, gonna go to map 1, click on that, go down to the bottom to import, and I'm gonna go find the side view here and press open, and it imported in. Oops. And you'll see here that it imported backwards, so that's not a problem. So right here is the left right where I imported the map, and right next to it you'll see you'll have a few options here. You can rotate it and do that, but the main thing we want to flip it 180 degrees. If you just press the flip button, that'll flip it the correct way. And both these reference images were set up. Oops, I didn't make that sculpt a polymesh 3D before, so I'll just do that real quick. You can ignore that if you want. So both of these drawings I lined up before, so everything should be mostly lined up here together. And so it's best just to do that mostly in Photoshop, so you can just kind of bring them in and just know that they'll match up, and all you have to worry about is centering the front image here. And so from here, there's only one more thing we want to do. And what that is the model right now is opaque and is showing up in front of the model. And so you would think logically what you'd want to do is take the material and make it translucent, but that's not really the way ZBrush is going to work here. But this actually ends up being a lot easier in my opinion, or it ends up being a better solution. So instead of making the material translucent, we're going to press a button that takes the drawing and then overlays it on top of the model a little bit. And so the button for that is in the same menu that we've been working on. And so it's one of the bottom menus of the draw menu. And so we imported our left, right, and our front, back in these tabs right here. And if you just go up to this little button right here that says front, it'll bring the drawings to the front and overlay them. So I'll press that, and you'll see here that now the models kind of overlay on top of the model, so we can kind of see the reference. And so keep in mind that if I turn on, perspective is turned off, and so we can kind of trust the orthographic images. And if we press perspective, you see how much it shifted right there. So just keep in mind that the way that I typically work is when I'm using the reference images, I'll turn perspective off and turn floor on. And then when I'm ready to kind of just see the model normally at that point, I'll turn perspective on and turn floor off. And I'll work that way. So just to work for a moment here, I'm going to work crudely. So I'm just going to go use the move tool. And I got that by clicking the brush and pressing M and then V. So M narrows it down to the brushes that start with M. And then V, you can see right here, is the secondary shortcut that gives us that exact move tool. And from here, can just really stretch out this model. You see how I used a much larger brush size there? So if you take your draw size and pull it up and you use the move tool, you can kind of get smoother move pull outs there. So if I am working with a small move tool, it can get kind of sloppy in there. And so again, I just take the draw size, get it pretty large before I kind of do this broad shaping. And I'll bring this out this way. Again, just kind of tracing the reference image. Oops. So this will look a little wrong when I bring it to the front view. You need to do it from the front and the side. And again, I'm working with a pretty large move tool here. Again, I'm just trying to get the base form. Okay, so I'll move it to the side, the front. Again, working with a pretty large brush tool. Okay, so this is it's a little hairy, but now what I'll do is turn off perspective and turn on the perspective mode and just finish what I started here, pulling some of this out. You can use the smooth tool and you can kind of start your head this way if you like. And so I kind of only use the move tool to kind of get a start here. Again, using the move tool and the smooth tool. And the smooth tool I just do by holding shift. And it doesn't matter what brush you're using, if you hold shift, it will smooth it out. You see there, when I turned on the orthographic view, I turned off perspective. Just doing a little. Okay. And so from here, I might move on past the move tool, which I was using before. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And do the clay tubes tool, which again is just one that I like to use a lot. And I might need to subdivide my geometry before I start using that, which again is underneath the tools menu, geometry, divide. Don't need to divide it too much because we're just filling out the base shapes here at this point. And I'm just building it up, pressing smooth, building it up, pressing smooth. Again, I'm not worrying too much about the detail that this is creating, because again, I'm just worrying about the main shapes that are happening here. So from here, I'll use the clay buildup tool, kind of carefully trace. You see, I just gave myself little benchmarks there. I might divide the geometry again. Oops. There we go. And you all might not prefer to work this way. You know, this comes down to personal preference. You know, starting out with clay tubes is definitely not for everybody. But in the past, this worked for me. And you can just start to kind of build out your shapes here this way. And so again, this works for, you know, this model's got a long way to go. But it's just, you know, this can be a starting point for you as you build it out. Oops. And the eyes can be tricky working this way. And I'm using the option button to kind of get negative sculpts and just normal brush strokes to get positive sculpts. But you see here how I'm not obsessing about the texture or anything that I'm creating. Just really trying to concentrate and move quickly, but not too quickly at the same time. You know, it's okay to take your time with this stuff. Oops. So I'm using my orthographic reference view in a turned off perspective. And I'm trying to just kind of get some of these lines cleared up, and I'm relying on my reference image just to kind of, so now I can kind of see by double checking those marks where some of those changes started to happen here. So I'm gonna hit, this character has kind of some gills that are coming out this way, so that's why I'm sculpting this. I also like to work in a different material than what I'm doing. See, matte cap gray, that's typically my preference there. So the eyes are tricky. So to start out with the eyes, I just try to get the brow and the nose line first, and then work my way into the eyes there. So I kind of try to get the nose and the cheekbones and a lot of the other face kind of working first before I kind of jump into the eyes, because it's hard to jump into the eyes without kind of getting into a lot of detail. I need to look at this character's nose because I'm kind of forgetting the way that his nose works, and his forehead needs a lot of work. Let me check back with my reference image. So I'm just checking here. All right. See, this is why it's important to check your reference image. I forgot that he had this kind of extrusion happening there. He also has an extrusion going this way. Oops. You see, so this the reference images can be just really helpful here as you're finding your shape here. And again, you know, this is going to look rough for a while, but it's just it's part of the process. And again, kind of my particular philosophy or technique when doing this kind of 3D sculpting is just kind of coming from a traditional media background. Just starting loose, and then, you know, there'll be time to tighten it up later in the process. So I'm just kind of building up, thinking about anatomy and kind of building up the form as I go. Forehead's got a little bit of a weird shape right now that I need to work out. It's like a little bulbous on the sides. So it's also a little too far angled that way, I feel like, so the move tool might be helpful. So this forehead is definitely giving me some fits. But don't get frustrated when that happens to you. You just gotta work through it. It'll get there. Just gotta be patient with it. In the meantime, I'm gonna move down to the chin, neck, and back cranium area. And so something I really like about the clay tubes buildup is you can just build up form pretty nicely. Building up form with a standard brush can it can be difficult because it's so rounded that I personally just have trouble with it. And this is a pretty normal workflow for people to kind of work this way. This isn't, you know, too out of the ordinary what I'm doing here in terms of the broad approach. So again, just kind of going back to my reference images here. And you can see I'm staying pretty close to it. I'm not worrying too much about, or I'm not trying to get it. I don't know. It's pretty good to get it exact if you can, you know. I'm going to try, since I've been having trouble with the forehead, just seeing what happens if I kind of trace this a little tighter in that area. Huh? I don't know if that helps. Yeah, so sometimes when you work in that view, you can kind of get some wonky results that you have to, it's up to you to fix up, but it's, I don't know, it's good to go back and forth on it. Honestly, kind of think I liked this before I started to do that change here. So I'm not going to go over it yet on this tutorial here. I'm just kind of showing, you know, one possible way to get started on your model. And again, these reference images can also, they're also very useful if you did all your basic modeling, shaping in Maya, or you've already done it. It's just nice to have them there. You can just kind of check it and yeah, just check your work. You can see for this, he has this vertical stripe bone extrusion going along the top of his head. So I'm trying to build that up, and I'm trying to think of the direction that the skin might go, you know, so I'm not just doing like a brush stroke that's going straight back like that for most of it there. And I'm thinking about the bone structure and then just the base form, you know, when you really get down to it. And again, I'm going to get to the eyes here. Let's change this to this view. Okay, so for the lips, I might need to boost up this geometry, give myself a little more geometry to work with here, or a little more resolution to work with, I should say. I might even need to do that again here. The problem with working this way is, oops, I don't know. The topology is kind of fighting against me here. Uh-oh. Oops, okay, I changed the color to black by mistake there. That just reminds me I'm going to save my work though. So don't worry, you know, for me right now the lips are looking a little wonky, and don't get frustrated and think to yourself, oh, well that's the way it is, you know, like if that's starting to happen to you, just be patient, you know, work through it. It'll get there. You know, at the same time, you know, take breaks, things like that, because there have been plenty of times where I've just been banging my head against the wall trying to get something, and just seeing it with some fresh eyes later on has been what I needed, you know, all along here. So I'm just using the, notice I've been using the clay tubes most of the time here for this process, and it's, again, it's a very crude, loose way of working, but I just kind of like that because it kind of forces me to not get too overly invested with any details in the shape here. And I'm just kind of using that, and then the move tool to kind of pull this out. You know, these lips still look totally wrong, but look nightmarish. Okay. Need to look at my reference image again. Forgetting what his nose and mouth are even supposed to be doing. Okay. You see here, I'm in the front view and I'm literally tracing. At least just giving myself some marks that I can trust. You see how I made those marks, and I can kind of see them, and I can use them as benchmarks now as I sculpt. Oops. I'm using the tablet here to get really soft button presses here. And I just had to I had to subdivide a few times here to get these lips because I just keep needing a little more geometry because the topology is not quite working. I should start using Dynamesh here, which is a technique I'm kind of trying not to show it yet, but it might be helpful here. So I just use the standard brush there, and then looking for the pinch tool. Oops. Just to tighten that back up again. Still looking a little weird, but it's just a battle of attrition here. Oops. Yeah, so starting to get the mouth. So these lips still need work, but I'm just kind of continuing to move here. I don't want to get stuck on anything. And I know he's got a bit of an alien nose. It's got a little bit of a classical shape to it. And I'm going to show how to deal with the eyes in a later tutorial here, so I'm going to kind of leave that area unchecked. It's a big area to leave unchecked, but it's got a bit of a broad chin here. Let me check my reference. Starting to get, kind of got a little too detail oriented there for a sec. Need to still be thinking about the big shapes here. Okay, so I'm starting to get a little tired, so I'm gonna cut this one off for today. But you can kind of start to see how you can kind of use the reference image and use some basic sculpting tools to kind of start to build out the image. Again, there's a lot of texture happening here and stuff like that, and that's going to get worked out because I'm going to retopologize this thing. Because if we press Shift F here, you can see the topology on here is completely god awful. You know, it's just going straight through here. So coming up, I'm going to show the Dynamesh tool, which can help out some on that. But additionally, I'm going to show the the quad draw tool in Maya here to help kind of start addressing the topology issues and make this a little easier to work with in Maya. You can see here, if I started trying to sculpt the eyes, it would just be a complete nightmare here